Long time no see for this book, hasn't it? It's been about 10 days. Or 11 days. Hang on, did I even, say those things in order? I didn't spell acknowledgments correctly. Either that or J.D. Vance didn't spell acknowledgments correctly. I'll fix it in here. Strange, it's not having the red thing over it. Okay. It's different with English and with American and Britain. Huh. Okay. Conclusion. Shortly before Christmas last year, I stood in the kids section of a Washington, D.C. Walmart shopping list in hand, gazing at toys and talking myself out of each of them. That year, I had volunteered to adopt a needy child, which meant that I was given a list by the local branch of the Salvation Army and told to return with a bag of unwrapped Christmas gifts. It sounds pretty simple, but I managed to find fault with nearly every suggestion. Pajamas? Poor people don't wear pajamas. Really? By the way, my head's not really into this book much anymore because I've also been reading I've been reading Genesis and at the same time this book in school. This isn't the book because I took the cover off so no one tries to kill me over it. Yet the side still shows this essentially in red. We fall asleep in our underwear or blue jeans. To this day, I find the very notion of pajamas an unnecessary elite indulgence, like caviar or electric ice cube makers. This is what I sleep with. Let me ask you something. If you have a wet dream, what are you going to do about your bed? How are you going to go back to sleep? I'm sorry I'm getting this personal. But you made this a little too personal now. How the hell are you going to get back to sleep? You done permanently scarred your damn bed. You need an extra layer of protection is essentially what you need. Where the hell am I? There was a toy guitar that I thought looked both fun and enriching. But I remembered the electronic keyboard my grandparents had given me one year and how one of my mom's boyfriends meanly ordered me to shut that fucking thing up. Oh boy. I passed on learning aids for fear of appearing condescending. Eventually I settled on some clothes, a fake cell phone, and fire trucks. I grew up in a world where everyone worried about how they'd pay for Christmas. Now I live in one where opportunities abound for the wealthy and privileged to shower their generosity on the community's poor. Many prestigious law firms sponsor an angel program which assigns a child to a lawyer and provides a wish list of gifts. Usha's former courthouse encouraged judicial employees to adopt a kid for the holidays. Each a child of someone who previously went through the court system. Program coordinators hope that if someone else purchased presents, the child's parents might feel less tempted to commit crimes in order to provide. And there's always toys for tots. During the past few Christmas seasons, I found myself in large department stores buying toys for kids I've never met. As I shop, I'm reminded that wherever I fell on the American socioeconomic ladder as a child, others occupy much lower rungs. Children who cannot depend on the generosity of grandparents for Christmas gifts. Parents whose financial situations are so dire that they rely on criminal conduct rather than payday loans to put today's hot toys under the tree. This is a very useful exercise. As scarcity has given way to plenty in my own life, these moments of retail reflection force me to consider just how lucky I am. Still, shopping for low income kids reminds me of my childhood and of the ways that Christmas gifts can serve as domestic landmines. Every year, the parents in my neighborhood would begin an annual ritual very different from the one I've become accustomed to in my new material comfort, worrying about how to give their kids a nice Christmas. Where was I? Wait a minute. Strange. With niceness always defined by the bounty underneath the Christmas tree. Yep. If your friends came over the week before Christmas and saw a barren floor beneath the tree, you would offer a justification. Mom just hasn't gone shopping yet. Or Dad's waiting for a big paycheck at the end of the year, and then he'll get a ton of stuff. These excuses weren't meant to mask what everyone knew. All of us were poor, and no amount of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles memorabilia would change that. Oh boy. I haven't seen that much of the original. I've seen, like, the newer version, like the one with the 3D animation, Very, very little of it, though. No matter our financial position, our family somehow managed to spend just more than we had on holiday shopping. Damn cars with a damn face like that. We didn't qualify for credit cards, but there were many ways to spend money you didn't have. You could write a future date on a check, a practice called post-dating, so the recipient couldn't cash it until you had money in the bank. You could draw a short-term loan for a payday lender. If all else failed, you could borrow money from the grandparents. Indeed, I recall many winter conversations in which Mom pleaded with Mama and Papa to lend her money to ensure that their grandchildren had a nice Christmas. They'd always protest Mom's understanding of what made Christmas nice, but they'd still give in. It might be the day before Christmas, but our tree wouldn't be piled high with the trendiest gifts, even as our family savings dwindled from very little to nothing. Then from nothing to sometimes something less than that. When I was a baby, Mom and Lindsay frantically searched for a Teddy Ruxpin doll. Oh no. A toy so popular that that every store in town sold out. It was expensive, and as I was only 2, unnecessary. I don't know who would want a Teddy Ruxpin. I remember I got a Teddy Ruxpin, the new one. I don't have it anymore. You only get 3. 3 stories. 3. You get that? And to get more, you had to get on the app. Stupid. You had to get on the app and purchase more of them. It's ridiculous, you know? Where am I? But Lindsay still remembers the day wasted searching for the toy. Mom somehow received a tip about a stranger who was willing to part with one of his Rex pins at a significant markup. Mom and Lindsay traveled to his house to fetch the trinket that stood between a child who could barely walk and the Christmas of his dreams. The only thing I remember of old Teddy is finding him in a box years later, his sweater tattered and his face covered in crusted snot. Oh, shit. Can't even turn the page. It's so thin now. This is how much left I have. It was the holiday season that taught me about tax refunds, which I gathered were free bits of money sent to the poor in the new year to save them from the financial discretions of the old one. Income tax refunds were the ultimate backstops. We can definitely afford this. We'll just pay for it with the refund check. Became a Christmas mantra, but the government was fickle. There were few moments more anxious than the one when Mom came home from the tax preparer in early January. Sometimes the refund exceeded expectations, but when Mom learned that Uncle Sam couldn't cover the Christmas splurge because her credits weren't high enough as she hoped, that could ruin your whole month. Ohio Januaries are depressing enough as it is. I assumed that rich people celebrated Christmas just like us. Perhaps the fewer financial worries and even cooler presents. Perhaps with fewer financial worries and even cooler presents. Yeah, though the presents are too cool that the damn kids are just accustomed to, like, yeah, I expected that. And then you don't get for them, and they're like, how could they? That's what I hate. That's what I hate about myself. I'm too spoiled now. I don't earn my stuff. Though I did earn this. I got back with God. And thanks to going to Glenn Campbell's gravesite. Where was I? Yet I noticed after my cousin Bonnie was born that Christmas time at Aunt Wee's house had a decidedly different flavor. Somehow my aunt and uncle's children ended up with more pedestrian gifts than I had come to expect as a child. There was no obsession with meeting a $200 or $300 threshold for each child. Damn. Well, my parents the other year, well, probably this year as well, spent $1,000 on me. Over 1,000. Like 2023. They bought this computer you're seeing. This year, they bought one of these webcams, though it was an ObSpot Tiny 2 Lite. It broke within a day. At least we got a refund on it, and we ended up getting this Insta360 Link 2. It's good, I'd say. It's the only other one on the market, because I don't want a other Tiny 2 or anything else. Pretty sure this was like the second best option. Where was I? No worry that a kid would suffer in the absence of the newest electronic gadget. Usha often received books for Christmas, My cousin Bonnie, at the age of 11, asked her parents to donate her Christmas gifts to Middletown's needy. Shockingly, her parents obliged. They didn't define their family's Christmas holiday by the dollar value of the gifts their daughter accumulated. Is it obliged? Obliged? Let me go to translate. And quit showing me Trump already. Yes, I support him as our commander-in-chief, but I don't know why he keeps showing up there. And with that 2016 picture or something.
Obliged.
Obliged, okay. Let me just search something up. Okay. However, you want to define these two groups and their approach to giving, rich and poor, educated and uneducated, upper class and working class. Their members increasingly occupy two separate worlds. As a cultural immigrant, that's what it says there. From one group to the other, I am acutely aware of their differences. Sometimes I view members of the elite with an almost primal scorn. Recently, an acquaintance used the word confabulate in a sentence, and I just wanted to scream. But I have to give it to them. Their children are happier and healthier. Their divorce rates lower, their church attendance higher, their lives longer. These people are beating us at our own damned game. I was able to escape the worst of my culture's inheritance, and uneasy though I am about my new life, I cannot whine about it. The life I lead now was the stuff of fantasy during my childhood. So many people helped create that fantasy. At every level of my life and in every environment, I have found family and mentors and lifelong friends who supported and enabled me. But I often wonder, where would I be without them? I think back on my freshman year of high school, a grade I nearly failed, and the morning when Mom walked into Mama's house demanding a cup of clean urine. Or years before that, when I was a lonely kid with two fathers, neither of whom I saw very often, and Papa decided that he would be the best dad he could be for as long as he lived. Or the months I spent with Lindsay, a teenage girl acting as a mother when our own mother lived in a treatment center. Or the moment I can't even remember when Papa installed a secret phone line in the bottom of my toy box so that Lindsay could call Mama and Papa if things got a little too crazy. Thinking about it now, about how close I was to the abyss gives me chills. I am one lucky son of a bitch. Why would you call your own mother a bitch? You done said that in the second chapter, that one doesn't like having their mother be referred to as a bitch. Not long ago, I had lunch with Brian, a young man who reminded me of 15-year-old JD. Like Mom, his mother caught a taste for narcotics, and like me, he has a complicated relationship with his father. He's a sweet kid with a big heart and a quiet manner. He has spent nearly his entire life in Appalachian, Kentucky. We went to lunch at a local fast food restaurant because in that corner of the world there isn't much else to eat. As we talked, I noticed little quirks that few others would. He didn't want to share his milkshake which was a little out of character for a kid who ended every sentence with please or thank you. He finished his food quickly and then nervously looked from person to person. I could tell that he wanted to ask a question, so I wrapped my arm around his shoulder and asked if he needed anything. Yeah, he started, refusing to make eye contact. And then, almost in a whisper, I wonder if I could get a few more French fries. He was hungry. In 2014, in the richest country on earth, he wanted a little extra to eat but felt uncomfortable asking. Lord help us. That's what it says. That wasn't me saying it, okay? Just a few months after we saw each other last, Brian's mom died unexpectedly. Let me use my chapstick. He hadn't lived with her in years, so outsiders might imagine that her death was easier to bear. Those folks are wrong. People like Brian and me don't lose contact with our parents because we don't care. We lose contact with them to survive. We never stop loving, and we never lose hope in our loved ones will and we never lose hope that our loved ones will change. Rather, we are forced, either by wisdom or by the law, to take the path of self-preservation. What happens to Brian? He has no mama or papa. At least not like mine. And although he's lucky enough to have supportive family who will keep him out of foster care, his hope of a normal life. I can't hold it up on that one end. Because if I hold it up from the other end, it'll just close on me. Normal life evaporated long ago, if it ever existed. When we met, his mother had already permanently lost custody. In his short life, he has already experienced multiple instances of childhood trauma. And in a few years, he will begin making decisions about employment and education that even children of wealth and privilege have trouble navigating. Any chance he has lies with people around him. His family, me, my kin, the people like us, and the broad community of hillbillies. And if that chance is to materialize, we hillbillies must wake the hell up. Brian's mom's death was another shitty card on an already abysmal hand. There are many cards left to deal. Gosh, my nose is itching. Whether his community empowers him with a sense that he can control his own destiny or encourages him to take refuge in resentment and forces beyond his control, whether he can access a church that teaches him lessons of Christian love, family, and purpose, whether those people who do step up to positively influence Brian find emotional and spiritual support from their neighbors. Chocolate nose is itching. You better be glad I'm sacrificing Hannity for y'all, okay? I'm sacrificing Hannity, who will have Tulsi Gabbard on there. I saw Christy Noam on Jesse Waters and Howard Lutnick on Brett Baer. Special report. I believe we hillbillies are the toughest GD'd people on this earth. I really don't want to say it out loud anymore. because that is very bad to say the Lord's name in vain. We take an electric saw to the hide of those who insult our mother. We make young men consume cotton undergarments to protect our sister's honor. But are we tough enough to do what needs to be done to help a kid like Brian? Are we tough enough to build a church that forces kids like me to engage with the world rather than withdraw from it? Are we tough enough to look others in the mirror and admit that our conduct harms our children? Public policy can help, but there is no government that can fix these problems for us. Recall how my cousin Mike sold his mother's house, a property that had been in our family for over a century, because he couldn't trust his own neighbors to ransack it. Mom refused to purchase bicycles for her grandchildren because they kept disappearing, even when locked up, from her front porch. She feared answering her door toward the end of our life because an able-bodied woman who lived next door would not stop bothering her for cash money. We later learned for drugs. These problems were never created by governments or corporations or anyone else. We created them, and only we can fix them. We don't need to live like the elites of California, New York, or Washington, D.C. We don't need to work for hundreds of hours a week at law firms. What's land firm? Why did I say that? And investment banks. We don't need to socialize at cocktail parties. We don't need to create... Oh, I saw something. We don't need to create a space for the JDs and Bryans in the world to have a chance. I don't know what the answer is precisely, but I know it starts when we stop blaming Obama or Bush or the faceless companies and ask ourselves what we can do to make things better. And Trump. But this was in 2016. This was before Trump was president. I wanted to ask Brian whether, like me, he had bad dreams. For nearly 2 decades, I suffered from a terrible recurring nightmare. The first time it came to me, I was 7, fast asleep in my great-grandma Blanton's bed. In the dream, I'm trapped in a large conference room with a large tree house, as if the keyboard elves had just finished a massive picnic in their tree house. We're still adorned with dozens of tables and chairs. I'm there alone with Lindsay and Mama, when all of a sudden Mom charges through the room, tossing tables and chairs as she goes. She screams, but her voice is robotic and distorted, as if filtered through radio static. Oh, God. Mama and Lindsay run for the hole in the floor, presumably the exit ladder from the treehouse. I fall behind, and by the time I reach the exit, Mom is just behind me. I wake up right as she's about to grab me, and I realize not that the monster has caught me, but that Mama and Lindsay have abandoned me. In different versions, the antagonist changes forms. He has been the Marine Corps drill instructor, a barking dog, a movie villain, and a mean teacher. Mama and Lindsay always make an appearance. They always make it to the exit just ahead of me. Without fail, the dream provokes pure terror. The first time I had it, I woke up and ran to Mama, who was up late watching TV. I explained the dream and begged her never to leave me. She promised that she wouldn't, and stroked my hair until I fell asleep again. My subconscious had sparred me for years. When, out of nowhere, I had the dream again a few weeks after I graduated from law school. There was a crucial difference. The subject of the monster's eerie ire. How do you say that? Okay, go back to translate. Seriously. You get Trump when you type in TR. What is this?
Ire.
Ire. Okay. Where am I? Uh-oh. The subject of the monster's ire wasn't me, but my dog Casper, with whom I'd lost my temper earlier in the night. There was no Lindsay and no Mamaw, and I was the monster. Oh God. I chased my poor dog around the treehouse, hoping to catch him and throttle him. But I felt Casper's terror, and I felt my shame at having lost my temper. Oh gosh. I finally caught up to him, but I didn't wake up. Instead, Casper turned and looked at me with those sad, heart-piercing eyes that only dogs possess. So I didn't throttle him. I gave him a hug. And the last emotion I felt before waking was relief at having controlled my temper. Oh, God, no. I got out of bed for a glass of cold water, and when I returned, Casper was staring at me, wondering what on earth his human was doing awake at such an odd hour. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, probably about the same time when it was the first I woke from a terrifying dream over 20 years earlier. There was no Mamaw to comfort me, but there were my 2 dogs on the floor. And there was the love of my life lying on the bed. Tomorrow, I would go to work, take the dogs to the park, buy groceries with Usha, and make a nice dinner. It was everything I ever wanted. So I patted Casper's head and went back to sleep. Yeah, I might have been like that with Kaylee, but I wasn't. I didn't grab her by the throat. I didn't really do that. It's terrible. Reminding me of when I was lost. How my temper screws me over. And here's the afterword. Many people, especially those who know me well, have asked me to describe my life since Hillbilly Elegy was published about 2 years ago. Okay, so this is about 2018. I find the question extremely difficult to answer. Since the book came out, I traveled to places I had never expected to go, spoken to thousands of strangers about my life story, met with a couple of former presidents, appeared on national TV, and, most important, had a baby. Well, my wife did the hard part. I just watched. How do you possibly summarize all of these experiences in a brief conversation? As a person who partially makes his living with the written and spoken word, I'm always a little disappointed at the answer that always comes to mind, but I offer it anyway. Well, it's pretty damn weird. When I decided to write Hillbilly Elegy, I wanted to answer 2 questions that had bothered me since my days as a student at Yale Law School. Why does this elite institution seem so culturally foreign? And relatedly, why are so few kids who grow up the way I did disadvantaged? To use the vocabulary of the day, making it our society's elite institutions. The book I wrote is an effort to answer that question in incredibly personal ways. And as I often tell people, I was initially uncomfortable with that. Indeed, even the process of finding endorsers, part of which forced me to send the book to strangers, made me want to gag. But I wrote the book the way I did because I thought it would make my argument more compelling. That if people experience these problems through the perspectives of real people, they might appreciate their complexity. Hillbilly Elegy's reception makes me think this was a wise decision. Increasingly, many of the family members I interviewed had an analogous reaction. I was pretty open with you, one of them explained, because I didn't think anyone would read it. Who'd want to hear our family story? Judging by the largely positive reception, turns out that many people did. And a whole lot more people did after he was nominated to be vice president with President Trump. And there was a fake rumor that went around after he was nominated that this book was about him. Yeah, I don't even want to explain it. You could see it on Wikipedia. I think the AP said it or something. That's why they were banned from the White House. Because of their stupidity. Just like they don't want to call it the Gulf of America. But they were forced to bring him back. Admittedly, largely positive is not the same as completely positive. And my book has its fair share of critics. It's conventional for people to say they were surprised by criticism, but I wasn't. I was definitely surprised that many people read the book. Our initial print run was 10,000 copies, and we're approaching 2 million now. But I knew that if the book was successful, there would eventually be a blowback. Well, there's a comeback. With few exceptions, I tried to avoid commenting on those reactions. A respected social scientist once told me that a book is like a baby. Eventually it leaves the house and you can't control the way people interact with it. But I've always found that critics occasionally react to the book in contradictory ways. My back's hurting. If I hadn't been surprised by the fact of criticism, I have occasionally been confused by that conflict. I've heard, for instance, from someone on the left that my book is a victim-blaming piece of anti-government libertarianism, and then, in the very same week, from someone on the right, that the book's premises, if accepted, would justify a massive expansion of government welfare programs. Both of these can't possibly be true. See, there's both radical right and radical left. And people need to fall in the constitutional center. Like JFK. Or... Oh, I hit my glasses. Whoops. I was trying to hit my eye because I got something in it. I tried to lay my cards explicitly on the table in one of the later chapters of the book. I am a conservative, one who doubts that the 1960s approach to welfare has made it easier for our country's poor children to achieve their dreams. But those of us on the right are deluding ourselves if we fail to acknowledge that it did accomplish something else. It prevented a lot of suffering and made it possible for people like Mamaw to access food and medicine when they were too poor, too old, or too sick to buy it themselves. This ain't nothing. To me, the fundamental question of our domestic politics over the next generation is how to continue to protect our society's less fortunate while simultaneously enabling advancement and mobility for everyone. We can easily create a welfare state that accepts the fact that a permanent American underclass, one where family dysfunction, childhood trauma, cultural segregation, and hopelessness coexist with some basic measure of subsistence. Subsistence. There, I said it right. Or we can do something considerably more difficult, reject the notion of a permanent American underclass. Yet to return to the issue that motivated me to write this book, doing better requires that we acknowledge the role of culture. As the liberal senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan argued, the central conservative truth is that it is culture, not politics, that determines the success of a society. I agree. In my view, that there will never be a purely government-based solution to the problems I write about has remained largely unchanged since Hillbilly Elegy came out. That said, I'm hardly a policy skeptic, and I think there is much more our governments could do to address these problems. How much more do I have left? Whoa, slow down. Okay, stop there. 2 more pages on that. Acknowledgments is like 3 pages. I don't know what the thing would be. Better policy requires better politics. However, like many people, I find new reasons each day to wonder whether our politics are remotely up to the challenge. To the degree I've commented on politics in the past 5 years, I've usually argued that my own party has to abandon the dogmas. What is that word? I don't even know what that is.
Dogmas.
Dogmas. What is dogmas even? A principle or a set of principles laid down by an authority as uncontrovertibly true. Incontrovertibly true. Yeah. Like President Trump has a mandate. Where am I with the dogmas? Abandon the dogmas of the 1990s and actually offer something of substance to working and middle-class Americans. And despite all of my reservations about Donald Trump, I ended up voting third party. Why? There were parts of his candidacy that really spoke to me, and his disdain for the elites and criticism of foreign policy blunders in Iraq and Afghanistan, to his recognition that the Republican Party has done too little for its increasingly working and middle-class base. For so many years, I and a few of my intellectual fellow travelers in the Republican Party were telling politicians to make precisely those sorts of arguments. Yet the populist rhetoric of the campaign hasn't informed the party's approach to governing. Unless that changes, I suspect Republicans will pay a heavy political price. Unfortunately, they did. Biden cheated his way through the 2020 election, which I'm still upset about. You know, this 7 wouldn't be necessary. We wouldn't be seeing the 7 right now if they didn't do that. It would have stayed 45. And he wouldn't have to do what Grover Cleveland did. Despite a relatively vibrant economy, many of the regional economies in the industrial Midwest continue to struggle. Wage growth lags behind productivity growth, and many metrics of broader social problems, opioid overdoses, rising mortality, are going up. And rancor of the 2016 campaign continues to infect our discourse. In short, there are many reasons to worry about the future, though I remain hopeful about it. Part of that stems in the fact that my own life remains remarkably blessed. Understandably, many people wonder what so many of the characters of Hillbilly Elegy are doing. I recently led that effort along with my partner Steve Case to bring more investment capital to neglected areas of the country, an effort we hope will spur serious job growth in places like my hometown. My aunt and sister continue to do well, and my mom is healthier and happier than she's been in a very long time. And of course, in June last year, my wife gave birth to our first child, a beautiful baby boy we named uh, Ewan Blaine Vance, his middle name taken from from Mama's father. He's a spunky, goofy baby, and he's given Mom and me something to bond over. Watching her with him and seeing how much she loves him has only accelerated the process I described toward the end of Hillbilly Elegy, of replacing resentment with sympathy and understanding. I continue to marvel at the life I led, constantly a little afraid of the proverbial rug will be pulled from under me. Someone told me not long ago that they felt I had survivor's guilt. That's too strong of a word, but I am acutely aware of how fortunate I am, and ever more convinced that we must extend the sort of luck had to I've had to more children, no matter how difficult. That to me is the critical question. And yet I'm only a bit closer to answering it. That I'm only a bit closer to answering it as I was 2 years ago. With Ewan not yet a year old, that question has taken on an intensely personal favor, and I'm acutely aware that many of my life's current worries, are jarringly differently from those of my childhood. Yale Law, with its prestige and privilege, was a culture shock unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But the train ride through Crazy Town shows no signs of slowing down. I'll never worry about money in the way that Mama did when she worried about not affording her prescription drugs if she bought me a calculator I needed for school. Now, my only financial problems revolve around how and when to help my family when they ask. I first flew on an airplane when I was 12, thanks to an uncle's airline miles. My infant son has already flown to California. Turn the page. There. Idaho and Florida. Again, I return to that word. Weird. It's just all so weird. There's something else. I was so desperate for stability during my formative years, both familial and financial, that I'm at risk of that very cliched transgression of youth, of focusing so much on what I lacked as a kid that sometimes failed to offer Ewan the things I did have. I knew my family loved me, even when they struggled to take care of themselves. I knew that poor people had dignity and agency, and that some of them use that agency for good and others for ill. I knew that loyalty was more important than advancement. I knew that a beat-up steel worker could be a good dad to a kid who needed it. I knew that a mother who could love I knew that a mother could love her son despite the gripe of addiction. I knew that a sick old woman could be a mother, a caretaker, a protector, an ass chewer, a gun shooter, a grandmother, and I knew, and I needed to know it, that that woman, my mama, would kill for me if she had to. Will my son know these things? I certainly hope so. Uh, it's not enough to teach him the right lessons. But it's not enough to teach him the right lessons. I didn't know these things because I read something that someone else had written down. I knew these things because I saw them with my own two eyes and felt them in my bones. For all the problems and hopelessness that exists in my community, I am proudest that my grandparents were hillbillies. There's a plot of land in Jackson, Kentucky, not far where Mama grew up, that has been in our family for around 100 years, and maybe longer. Excuse me. Mama and many of her siblings were born there, and both Mama and Papa are buried there now. I joke with Usha that someday we'll be buried there too. But at least for me, it's not a joke. The irony of the book's success is that it gave me the means to buy that piece of land, something I've wanted to do for much of my life. I bought it most of all because I want Mama and Papa's graves to be maintained for our family for generations to come. But I also bought it because I wanted a reason to take my own son back to the place that formed such a large piece of my childhood. I want Ewan to explore those hills, search for crawdads in those creeks, and feel at home there like I did. And that's the afterword. Now let me get to acknowledgments. Last 3 pages of the book. Now I have no idea what acknowledgments will tell me. Writing this book was among the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. I learned much I didn't know about my culture, my neighborhood, and my family. And I relearned much that I had forgotten. I owe a great deal to many people, in no particular order. Tim Bennett, my wonderful agent that believed in the project even before I did. She encouraged Tina Bennett. I read it wrong, sorry. She encouraged me when I needed it, pushed me when I needed it, and guided me through a publication process that initially scared the hell out of me. She has the heart of a hillbilly and the mind of a poet, and I'm honored to call her a friend. Besides Tina, the person who deserves the most credit for this book's existence is Amy Chua, my Yale contracts professor, who convinced me that both my life and the conclusions I drew from it were worth putting down on paper. She had the wisdom of a respected academic and the confident delivery of a tiger mother, and there were many times that I needed and benefited from both. The entire team at Harper deserves tremendous credit. Jonathan Jow, I guess that's how you say it, my editor, helped me think critically about what I can't turn this page there wanted the book to accomplish, and had the patience to help me accomplish it. Sophia Grootman gave me the book a fresh eye when it was desperately needed. Joanna, Tina, and Katie guided me through the publicity process with warmth and skill. Tim Dugan took a chance on this project and me when he had little reason to do so. For all of them and their work on my behalf, I'm very thankful. Many people read various drafts and offered important feedback, from questioning the choice of word in a particular sentence to doubting the wisdom of deleting an entire chapter. Charles Tyler read a very early draft and forced me to hone in on a few core themes. Kyle Bumgarner and Sam Rudman, I don't know, I think it's Rudman, offered helpful feedback early in the writing process. Keel Brennan Marquez, who has had the official and unofficial burden of teaching me writing for many years, read and critiqued multiple drafts. I appreciate all of their efforts. I'm grateful to the many people who opened up about their lives and work, including Jane Rex, Sally Williamson, Jennifer McGuffey, um, Mindy Farmer, Brian Campbell, Vicky Baldwin, Stevie Van Gordon. Hang on, who's Brian Campbell? I think I recognize that name. That depends. I don't know, there's other Brian Campbells out there. Sherry Gaston, Katrina Reed, Elizabeth Wilkins, J.J. Snidow, Snidow, I don't know how you say it, and Jim Williamson. They made the book better by exposing me to new ideas and experiences. I've been fortunate to have Daryl Stark, Nate Ellis, Bill Zabowski, I don't know, Craig Baldwin, Jamil Giovanni, I don't know, Ethan, Doug, Valang, whatever, Kyle Walsh, and Aaron Cash in my life, and I consider each of them more brother than friend. I've been fortunate, too, to have mentors and friends of incredible ability, each of whom ensured that I had access to opportunities I simply didn't deserve. They include Ron Selby, Mike Stratton, Shannon Arledge, Sean Haney, Brad Nelson, David Froome, Matt Johnson, Judge David Bunning, Rayhan Salem, I guess that's how you say it. Salem, I don't know. AJ Royan, I don't know. Fred Mole, and Peter Thiel. Many of these folks read versions of the manuscript and provided critical feedback. I owe an incredible amount to my family, especially those who opened their hearts and shared memories, no matter how difficult or painful. My sister Randy Ratliff and Aunt Wee, Loy Mabers, deserve special thanks, both for helping me write this book and supporting me throughout my life. I'm also grateful to Jim Vance, I guess that's his papaw, Dan Mabers, Kevin Ratliff, that's his brother-in-law, Mom, Bonnie Rose Mabers, I think that's his mama, Hannah Mabers, Cameron Ratliff, Megan Ratliff, Emma Ratliff, Haiti Honchell Blanton, Don Bowman, my dad, Cheryl Bowman, Corey Bowman, Chelsea Bowman, Lakshmi Chirlokiri, Chris Chirlokiri, I think that's Usha's side. Shreya Chilokuri, I don't think, I'm not saying it right. Donna Vance, Rachel Vance, Nate Vance, Lily Hudson Vance, Daisy Hudson Vance, Gail Huber, Alan Huber, Mike Huber, Nick Huber, Denise Blanton, Arch Stacy, Rose Stacy, Rick Stacy, Amber Stacy, Adam Stacy, Tayton, I guess, Stacy, Betty Sebastian, David Blanton, which is what his middle name is now, Gary Blanton, Wanda Blanton, Pet Blanton, T. Barry Blanton, and every crazy hillbilly I've ever had the honor to call my kin. Last but certainly not least is my darling wife, Usha, who read every single word of my manuscript literally dozens of times, offered needed feedback, and when I didn't want it, supported me when I felt like quitting, and celebrated with me during times of progress. So much of the credit for both this book and the happy life I led belongs to her. Though it is one of the great regrets of my life that Mama and Papa never met her. It is the source of my greatest joy that I did. And that's the story. The last page is the notes of his what is it? I don't forgot. His citations. Now I'm telling you right now, in Mark Levin's book, he has a whole lot more citations. He doesn't just say all this stuff himself. He has many citations. His first chapter was like 30 pages and had way more citations than that book even has. So yeah, overall, that is a great book. Being it the first book I ever read on my own, that is a great book. Better than any book I've had to read in school. And had to read on my own somewhat, like Lord of the Flies, which I used an audiobook to read. That one I've read out loud. Now, Mark Levin and the Bible, I'm having to read not with an audiobook, since the cell phone ban has come through. Though it's not in the state legislature yet. It doesn't start till next year. But my school's already pushing it with their using the school board as a cover-up, which I don't believe there's a school board. It's just a cover-up they use to just pass the buck. I'm just kidding. But all kidding aside, that was probably one of the greatest books I'll ever read. So yeah. Thank y'all so much for watching me read this book. And, wait, Trump signs an executive order. What is this? To revitalize U.S. shipbuilding. Hang on, what is this? Okay. Yeah, Alan Jackson's retiring from touring. I'm not sure if he's going to do what, George Strait is doing. I hope he does. But, yeah. So, yeah. Thank y'all for watching me read this book. Definitely one of the greatest books I've ever read. I had the liberty of watching the movie on Netflix before he was even nominated. I didn't even know who the hell he was. I didn't even know he was a U.S. Senator. I watched it a month before he was even nominated for Vice President. I'm like, that's J.D. Vance. And Papa, he's like, the boy? Yes. That's him. Still can't believe that. I watched the movie literally a month before he was even nominated to be vice president with President Trump. So yeah. So be sure to like, subscribe, comment, whatever. I'll see y'all next time. Tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow, but definitely Friday for me playing more, well, maybe actually I'll stream tomorrow playing, Animal Crossing. I'll see y'all next time. Adios. And God bless. That's Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. In the New International Version words, which I don't prefer. I prefer King James.